Singer and songwriter Sylvester James Jr., professionally known simply as Sylvester, was born on September 6, 1947, in the Watts district of Los Angeles, California. He was the firstborn of 3 brothers, by a mother who worked very hard to make ends meet, as his father rarely figured in his life, leaving the family when the boys were still young. Since his mother was a devout Christian, Sylvester and his brothers regularly accompanied her to their Pentecostal church. There, he developed a particular interest in gospel music and exhibited the musical talent to back it up at the tender age of 3. Recognized as a uniquely gifted singer, the church put him in a front and center role in their choir, and it was in that early role that he learned how to control his voice, but also to sing with soul-stirring passion. He even began singing on the local gospel circuit, but as he grew older, he stood out in ways that weren't as welcome among his fellow churchgoers. According to one of his sisters, as a young child, he always displayed characteristics of that kind of lifestyle, one that the church would not be supportive of. But according to Sylvester, the church was the exact place where his sexual activity began. At the age of 8, he was sexually molested by a man at the church, at the time rumored to be the church organist. When Sylvester required hospitalization from the assault, the church, in a stunning display of hateful stupidity, treated the attacker and victim with the same level of scorn. Ridiculed for effeminacy and condemned for homosexuality at the age of 13, Sylvester stopped attending the church that shaped his childhood and allowed him the first opportunity to develop into a singer. Even after that experience, though, he never lost his love for the church or for the power of gospel music, but he refused to tone down his personality to fit the fashion of the times. During Sylvester's childhood, his mother gave birth to several more children by multiple men before marrying again in the early 1960s, with whom she adopted several foster children. The tension and conflict that resulted in the home between Sylvester and his mother and stepfather caused him to move in with his grandmother, who had an accepting attitude toward homosexuality. It was good that she did, because in Sylvester's teenage years, he not only lived an openly gay lifestyle, but would often dress in full female attire. His grandmother made him aware of divas such as Billie Holiday, Lena Horne, and Josephine Baker, all of whom became his early musical role models. At 15, he began frequenting local gay clubs and built up a group of friends from the local gay community, eventually forming themselves into a group which they called the Discotheques. During this time, he also befriended Etta James and often sang with her in the privacy of her home. The group openly flouted California's law against public cross-dressing by wandering the streets of South Central Los Angeles in full drag and through outrageous hedonistic parties. Sylvester later claimed the Discotheques had also joined in the 1965 Watts riots, looting, what else? Wigs, hairspray, and lipstick. By the end of the decade, though, the Discotheques had begun to drift apart, so it was time for Sylvester to try something else. While making the rounds in Hollywood one night, he met a member of a transvestite cabaret troupe from San Francisco who called themselves the Coquettes. He decided to go there and pay them a visit. That decision would change his life forever. By the late 1960s, San Francisco was ground zero for that decade's cultural revolution, a non-stop celebration of musical, political, and sexual liberation. So when Sylvester moved there in early 1970, he never looked back. On weekend nights, he and the Coquettes played to sold-out shows at the Palace Theater. His flashy performances led to him landing a recording contract with Blue Thumb. He got right to work on his first album, with help from his band, called the Hot Band, and backing singers, the Pointer Sisters. Of course, we know now that the Pointer Sisters went on to get their own record deal and blaze their own trail to stardom. Sylvester, on the other hand, did not, as his first 2 albums went nowhere. So he put together another band and began casting for singers to complement his sound and his style. Sylvester was immediately captivated by one of the women auditioning, named Martha Wash. He asked her if she had another large black female friend who could sing, after which she introduced him to Izora Rhodes. Although he referred to them simply as the girls, Martha and Izora named themselves 2 Tons of Fun. Signed by Fantasy Records in 1977, Sylvester's self-titled debut album with 2 Tons of Fun didn't do much, but their follow-up the following year, titled Step 2, took off, fueled by an irresistible song called Dance Disco Heat. It hit #1 on the Billboard Dance Songs chart. Sylvester had finally found his groove, and he wasn't about to let it go. After 4 albums and a decade worth of performing, he'd shot to the top of the charts with Dance Disco Heat, while pulling back the curtain on the power and popularity of the underground disco scene. Then, the album gained even further attention for its second single, You Make Me Feel Mighty Real. It also went to #1 on the dance chart and became the signature song of his career. Now, Sylvester began to cross over into mainstream media. He won a Billboard Award for Best Male Singer and made a cameo appearance in the movie musical The Rose with Bette Midler. He also hit the road from the UK to Brazil, where his charisma and his character struck a universal chord. Sylvester had always prided himself on creating a unique look and style, and he was fiercely protective of that image. His publicity photos were always a source of heavy discussion and intensive labor because he wanted to be flawless. As his star rose, his bandmates became stars as well. 2 Tons of Fun was offered their own record deal. If you thought Sylvester would be happy for them, however, you thought wrong. He was not happy at all, believing they were abandoning him. The ladies did their best to reassure him that they were doing no such thing. They just wanted a taste of their own success. Stars, which dropped in 1979, released 3 singles, which all made it to #4 on the dance chart, including I Who Have Nothing, which also just made it into the Hot 100 Top 40 at #40. Around the same time, on March 11, 1979, the mayor of San Francisco officially declared it Sylvester Day. He also performed at the War Memorial Opera House, the city's most prestigious concert hall, before friends, family, and thousands of devoted fans. The show was recorded for a live double album titled Living Proof. But by 1980, Sylvester's career was at a crossroads. He was a Black, openly gay performer who was burning up the dance charts and showing the potential for crossover success. The label didn't want Sylvester's gender-bending image to be front and center, so they asked him to dial it back. Sylvester, though, had already made his choice, and he wasn't about to change it. Tensions with his label came to a head when Sylvester posed for the cover of his next album. They were not feeling the hair extensions, suggestive poses, and uncorked champagne bottle spewing its contents everywhere. In the end, the cover was toned down. Sylvester then met singer Jeannie Tracy. She became one of his backing singers, and over time, one of his closest friends. Sylvester's next 2 albums, 1980's Sell My Soul and 1981's Too Hot to Sleep, didn't do nearly as well as his previous work. They would also be his last for the label. Both 2 Tons and Sylvester came to suspect that Fantasy Records had failed to pay them all of the money that they were owed from the sale of their records. After Sylvester left the label, he filed a lawsuit against them. It ultimately proved successful in establishing that the company had been withholding money from him, totaling just over $200,000. Nevertheless, they proved unable to pay anything more than $20,000, meaning that Sylvester never saw the majority of the money that was legally owed to him. He moved on and signed with Megatone Records. His first project for them, titled All I Need, dropped in 1982. Do You Wanna Funk, a high-energy dance track, was released as a single, climbing to #4 on the dance chart and entering the pop charts in a number of other countries. At this point, living fabulous was at the core of Sylvester's mission, and he didn't hold back dropping the cash to do it. He was constantly seen out and about with his $25,000 fur coat on and dripping in $50,000 worth of diamonds. He even inspired impersonators, which took a turn for the worse when one began robbing stores in New York City and the real Sylvester got arrested and locked up for the crime. Eventually, the police did catch the real perpetrator. Unfortunately, at this time, the AIDS epidemic was spreading like wildfire throughout San Francisco. Sylvester decided to do his part in the fight and put his fame to good use. He participated in many fundraisers and circulated information on practicing safe sex. Call Me was released in 1983, but it was not a commercial success. 4 songs from the album were released as singles, although only Trouble in Paradise entered the top 20 on the dance chart. His next album, 1984's M1015, was more frenetic and pumping than his previous releases, having embraced the recently developed genre of high energy, but it also included elements of electro and rap. What would be Sylvester's final album, Mutual Attraction, was released in 1986. He scored 2 major dance hits with a cover of Stevie Wonder's Living for the City and Someone Like You, which reached number 2 and number 1, respectively. For Sylvester, it seemed like a new beginning. It turned out to be the beginning of the end. Though his greatest success came as a dance diva, Sylvester never lost connection with his early gospel upbringing, and he longed for a place where he could give both his music and his spirit free rein. He found such a place in Love Center, an Oakland-based church founded by Walter Hawkins, of the popular gospel group the Hawkins Family. They were dedicated to providing a spiritual home without regard to race, creed, or sexual identity. Sadly, Sylvester's longtime boyfriend, Rick Cranmer, passed away in 1987 after becoming aware that he was infected with HIV 2 years prior. After being hospitalized several times himself, Sylvester would be officially diagnosed with full-blown AIDS by the middle of the following year. He told the LA Times in a phone interview, "I'd been having throat problems and I thought it was bronchitis. I wasn't worried. Having AIDS hadn't even crossed my mind." Since that time, he'd spent 5 weeks in a hospital with pneumocystis, during which time he confronted his own mortality. "I was ready to go. I made peace with that, and I never thought, why me? I just accepted it." While often plagued by fatigue, Sylvester was well enough to lead a gay pride parade in San Francisco that June, albeit from a wheelchair. "I can't walk very well anymore. I have problems with my feet, and sometimes the pain is unbearable. But I don't like to take painkillers because of the side effects." Despite the physical setbacks, he insisted that his outlook remained positive. "I've been in situations I shouldn't have been in. We all have. But I think that I'm a good person, and I don't regret anything I've done in my life. Down the line, I hope I won't be in a lot more pain. But I don't dwell on that. I'll be fine, because my spirit is fine." For Thanksgiving 1988, his family spent the holiday with him. According to one of his sisters, he said it was the best Thanksgiving of his life. On December 16, 1988, Sylvester died of AIDS-related complications. He was 41 years old. He planned his own funeral, insisting that he be dressed in a red kimono, placed in an open-top coffin for the mourners to see, and had Jeannie sing, accompanied by choirs and many flowers. The whole affair took place at his church, the Love Center, with standing-room-only attendance. A compilation album titled Immortal was posthumously released containing Sylvester's final studio recordings. In his will, he had declared that royalties from the future sale of his music be devoted to 2 HIV/AIDS charities, Project Open Hand and the AIDS Emergency Fund. Sylvester was one of 3 artists inducted into the Dance Music Hall of Fame, alongside Chic and Gloria Gaynor in 2005. In 2019, You Make Me Feel Mighty Real was selected by the Library of Congress for preservation in the National Recording Registry for being culturally historical or aesthetically significant. Sylvester leaves a legacy of musical greatness and personal bravery and independence. He refused to live in shame for a natural inclination that enabled him to pursue and forge his own identity. He also rejected those who would try to use him as a political prop, stating that his music was to transcend the gay rights movement and resisted being narrowly categorized. When people would ask him to label himself gay rights activist, drag queen, etc., he would say simply and proudly, "I am Sylvester."